Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products at phoenixNAP. And with me, I've got Michael Deemer, Inside Systems Engineer at VEEAM. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me, William. Good morning.
Absolutely. And for everyone in the audience today, we've got a great webinar. We're going to be talking about ransomware. My illustrious marketing team has come up with the great slogan of backup or pay up. It's obviously the marketing way of saying, look, there are ways to protect yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about what those look like today. We'll start with a little bit of education and kind of move from there. All right. So what does this look like, right? You know, when you hear the word ransomware, you try to understand how and why your organization or your teams are affected by, the nefarious capabilities of these attacks. I think it's important to understand, how the various variants out there of ransomware look to move through a logical system. They have there's been a lot of research done in this. We can provide you with some links after this if you like, but around what's called the ransomware kill chain. And it is, the very basics of exactly how you get from point A to point B. There are other delivery mechanisms that happen under send. There are various ways that things get infected, but ultimately, the majority of the ransomware that impacts our everyday lives, possibly your organization, looks essentially like this. You get attackers sending phishing, sometimes it's links inside of emails that lead to kind of the drive-by download. Users click something, whether it's open an attachment or download something, ultimately through various, either very, very targeted exploits or through poor permissioning and user account control, you end up with a malicious executable on a system. That system usually has access to other systems. They find a way to make themselves persistent through various types of different security technologies and through reboots and through all kinds of other mitigation capabilities. And then ultimately they start looking for new places to land. I ultimately think that as you move forward through this kill chain and you get to that locking stage, you're in a tough spot, right? Whether it's one system or it's 100 systems or 1,000 systems that have been locked, encrypted, however you want it to say that, you are set with a decision point. You're set with a decision point, and ultimately you are forced to either pay up or find a different way out. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So what's going on in the market today? We're seeing quite a few changes in the way that data is being harvested, the way that ransomware is kind of functioning and living inside of environments, and the way that it's being delivered to the less capable to take the same types of action. So when we talk about ransomware as a service, ultimately there are groups of folks out there that are looking for specific either access to specific data or ways to make money. They're willing to take the risk of being the extortionist, but they don't have the technical capability to deliver, manage, create the actual viruses or infected payloads themselves. And so people with the entrepreneurial spirit around in the security community are building platforms where you can actually go and pay an amount to have effectively a managed ransomware campaign run against a specific organization or against a specific set of IP addresses and or email addresses, right? And the idea here is make money. This data leaking as a service, has some different needs and interests where they're trying to actually take specific types of data and or cause specific types of harm, leaking of harmful emails, leaking of specific plans or early access to specific business plans, etc. What we are seeing is people are starting to stay away from paying the ransoms. I think ultimately what's being learned is that there's just no guarantee you're actually going to get the key to encryption after you pay, and you don't fix the problem by what actually ultimately got you infected in the way that it moved through to create a critical problem for your company didn't come from or isn't fixed by paying the ransom. So ourselves and others have been asking folks to stop paying the ransom, start finding ways to protect your organization, and look for different solutions that you can leverage to ensure that you're not stuck at that last decision point of to pay or lose, right? You have to find a way to stop from being there. Now, that said, and one of the things that we are talking about a little bit today, but we're not going to solve for on the backup side is there is this publishing of stolen data thing that's starting to become a much more frequent addition to the ransomware, where they say, look, we're not only just going to lock your systems and ask you to pay ransom to get them back, we're going to exfiltrate a ton of data before we do that. And we're going to tell you, we're going to leak all your data if you don't pay up. And that's kind of part of that data leaking as a service thing as well. Where that becomes the reason for you to pay, not to get access to your systems. And there are a ton of other security controls that we can talk about to help you from even becoming infected with ransomware. And there's a lot of capabilities out there from various partners of ours and others that will help prevent unauthorized executables from running on systems. But today we're going to talk about the availability side and the recovery side of that, which for a lot of types of ransomware is truly kind of your easy button way out, right? It's the okay, that system's locked, I'm just going to restore from my known good state from the other day and delete it or remove it from the network in some capacity. So lots of things going on there. That I mentioned kind of that saying target, that's you pay up, you get access, and then 2 weeks later, another attacker hits you with the same problem and then you're stuck again. So no one wants to do that. I'll throw these statistics up here. You guys can kind of read through them. I'm not going to cover them in a lot of detail, but I think that the data is still pointing out that around $125,000 to $150,000 average cost for ransomware attack, and this is across the whole business, right? Even the smaller organizations where it's some type of critical data loss that keeps them from billing a customer correctly or keeps them from operating for a period of time that causes lost revenue or damaged reputation. There's just so many ways that it costs a business money. It's not just in paying a ransom. It's not just in some type of loss of transactional capability. It's very, very multifaceted. We're seeing this global ransomware damage number just to continue to go skyrocketing through all this. So yeah, I think that as you look at this this kind of all of these statistics, the business justification is here for you to take action for your organization, and we'll kind of walk through some of that. So I'm going to launch a couple polls real quick so we can get a feel for the audience, understand what you're dealing with a little bit better, so that as we move through the rest of this presentation, we can cater to some of that. So how much data are you guys responsible for protecting today? Now, that's a good one. Less than 100 TB, 100 to 500 TB, or 500 to 1,000 TB. So that poll is launching. Hopefully it should be there now. It's there. So go ahead and get that in for me. Looks like everybody's jumping on it quickly. Okay, this is pretty typical 80-20 rule. less than 100 TB is pretty much 80% of everybody on the call, and then you got the 20% that are between 100 and a petabyte and or more. We don't have a more here, but I'm sure some of those in the 2% there are actually over a petabyte. So that's good data. I'm gonna go ahead and close up that poll. Most of the stuff that we're gonna get to today is really gonna be most useful for the smaller business. So, for that 80% on there that are dealing with kind of small business issues, I think that this will be very beneficial. Do you have systems in place to fight ransomware today? Do you feel like you're protected? And go ahead and say yes if you feel like you have either a backup that you're certain is immutable in some way, or can't be locked or encrypted. And then also go ahead and say yes if you feel like you've got some type of very potentially intrusive binary whitelisting going on in your organization, to ensure that executables don't run at all, right? Unless you've blessed them. Okay. So I think that is, what I would say is that what we find is, the 70+% that are saying that, they would like to research other options, but they feel like they have something in place. Typically, that is the folks on this call that have some type of backup technology in place. They feel like they got their backups under control. They've got 3-2-1. They've got some type of either they're air gapping some backups, or they've got some type of capability to ensure that those backups are not exposed. The one thing I would say for the 70% that have clicked, they feel like they have it under control. If you're talking about backup, do some real soul searching to try to ensure that that your backup is good, right? Because we didn't mention it, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, is that another alarming trend that's been happening for a while, not just in 2020, is ransomware trying to find backups in an environment, looking for specific types of software, whether that's your VEEAM, Semantic, Veritas, whatever, and trying to identify the data stores and locking those too. So just having a backup on a backup array somewhere probably isn't enough at this point to make sure that you can survive through a ransomware attack. All right, perfect. So let's see here. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so let's cover some of these do's and don'ts of how to keep yourself protected from ransomware. So the big ones, right? Secure offsite backups of your data. Secure offsite, and hopefully on some type of media that is immutable, right? So I think that what we're learning more and more and more is, get a copy of your data, get 3 copies of your data, get one of those offsite, right? And then find a way to ensure that offsite copy is not persistently connected to your network, or if it is, it's on some type of media that cannot be overwritten by policy. And I think that is a place that we're starting to find new and unique solutions, and we'll talk a little bit about those today. Making sure you're keeping your software up to date. If the vulnerability doesn't exist, you can't be exploited. So a lot of times, oh shoot, I don't know what the statistic is, but in my experience in the last 20 years, the number of folks I've seen that generally the reason that they got compromised is because of out-of-date software running on their system. You know, it's probably 85% of the time, right? That's why something happens. Not because of some type of 0-day that no one knows about, right? It's that, you know, unpatched Adobe Acrobat that's, you know, for whatever reason, due to your corporate patching policies or some system becomes disconnected for some period of time and doesn't get updated, that's where you get hit. Train your employees on how to detect phishing. Our organizations are you know, working hard internally to train our own folks. We have some of the craziest, you know, phishing test, you know, not only test frameworks and software out there, but also the tests that our security teams are running. They drive me batty because, you know, I feel like I am well equipped to deal with these things. I mean, I don't think I've ever fallen for one of them completely, but I struggle to tell whether or not this is a test or if this is something real. And I'm always erring on the side of caution. And you know, it's through that training that I end up there, that I end up in this place where I just err on the side of caution, make sure that it's not some type of issue, pass it through our security team and our scanners if I do have a question, and kind of go there. Yeah, so, and then strong passwords, super important, right? You know, I think the other key for strong passwords is just random passwords. Like strength is definitely due to character use and length, but you know, having the same password and just changing the number on the end of it is not a good idea, right? It could be 15 characters long, but if it's compromised one place and all you do is just change that last bit, you know, you're not protecting yourself appropriately. So finding some way, whether it's through a reputable password manager, that's my recommendation, to ensure that you generate a secure password per website, per application, etc. And then you have a way to reference that easily. And just, I mean, this last one's the no-brainer, you know, limit employee access to mission critical data. You have to do the due diligence to ensure that you have least privilege model inside your organization. You have to make sure that you don't have, by accident or ignorance or laziness, 100 domain administrators in your organization. Every executive's a domain admin or a root access admin, right? You just can't do that. And you have to have those hard and real conversations with folks to make sure that that doesn't become the case. And on to the don'ts. Don't pay the ransom. I understand what I'm saying. You know, it sounds like it's, well, maybe there should be you know, some reasons to pay. I can generally say that in my experience and talking with my friends in the industry, that paying the ransom basically doesn't get you anywhere, right? You're either going to not get your data, you're going to get your data, but ultimately some type of other attack is going to befall you, and then that next time you go to pay thinking you're going to get your data, you're not going to get your data. So you know, really focus on that side. Focus your time and your effort. If you say, oh man, I would pay $10 million to make sure I have my data in the event of some type of major ransom, you know, you should be paying, you know, at least that much, if not, you know, slightly less, to ensure that you don't get there, right? Because I would say if you look at the kind of the basic tenets of security, you look at these concepts of annual rate of occurrence and or, you know, average loss expectancy. These are kind of two major metrics that you look at when you're trying to decide whether or not you should invest in protecting something. We're getting to a point where ransomware in some capacity its annual rate of occurrence is like crazy high, especially in large organizations, right? You know, so it's just going to keep happening to you if you don't find ways to protect yourself. And then after you find ways to protect yourself and you feel confident that your security controls to prevent ransomware are strong, that you can take that kind of annual rate of occurrence, successful occurrence, I guess, down to a very, very low number, then you can focus on, okay, if it does happen for some reason and some mission critical data is compromised, now I've got my backups, right? Now I've got my my disaster recovery capabilities, my business continuity plans. I've got those things as my extra insurance on top of that. This kind of seems like a no-brainer. Obviously, don't share passwords with people. It's pretty simple. And don't create backups while in a ransomware attack. Yeah, definitely don't do that, because it's going to directly connect, or show an attacker and or piece of malware where your backups are. It's going to be identified, and they will try to stop that. Also, it will compromise your backups with the ransomware that you have been infected by. So this is not a good idea. Yeah, the rest of it's pretty straightforward. People are going to click on things. People are going to open emails. They're going to open attachments. You got to find ways to protect them from themselves, right? If you're that IT administrator, security person, whatever, you have to find ways to protect them from themselves. All right. So why do we look at, disaster recovery and backups as being a key element to surviving a ransomware attack, right? I think the thing for me that's so important is, how do you recover your data, quickly? And, having a known good copy of your data that can be quickly spun up, scanned for some type of malware, at least you know what you've been attacked by, likely based on the way that ransomware works. Find ways to ensure that the backups of your data are clean from that, i.e. the malware hasn't been sitting there for 2 days waiting. It's another kind of common thing these days is to infect a system and wait for 7 or 8 days, waiting to hope to beat the backup window, and then infecting it, so that you basically don't have a copy anymore that's not infected. But known good backup is the key. It is the key to survival, right? It is the key to getting back up and running if you're completely locked out and your data is essentially gone at that point. It does eliminate the need to pay the ransom in order to get your data back. It is essential that you find out how it happened, not just restore it and call it a day, right? So that you can protect yourself from it happening again, and something else potentially going wrong. You get to eliminate a ton of these potential cost issues and or organizational hit that you experience by reputational damage or loss of customers due to incapacitation at the time. And there are ways to make sure that that all of these capabilities are built to help your business with other things, not just ransomware. I think that's the other side, right? There's so many reasons why you might need solid, secure backups or consistent disaster recovery replication. But ultimately, we find that security issues that are very, very common can be a good reason to do or to acquire and or implement disaster recovery as a service or backup as a service. And when you look at like cloud-based disaster recovery and or backup, offsite backup, there's a few kind of key critical components that you want to take a look at, right? The idea that you're going to buy a bunch of infrastructure, park it in a data center somewhere, maintain it all, license it all, and then hopefully never use it is crazy. Like I give this example that I think helps, show this off pretty well. Essentially, for the folks out there that are still buying two of everything and replicating everything and sitting it somewhere, not for like active availability, but for the purpose of just failing over, right? It's akin to buying two of the same car in case you wreck one of them. No one does that, right? So I feel like, we get insurance, there's rental capabilities, there's all these other things that you use in the case of a car disaster. Why would you make that kind of different decision for the business? You get this automated and or orchestrated replication and failover capability that I think is important, and it gives you freedom of choice in your availability of where you want to have that data, right? You can have multiple copies in multiple places. You could have, one location DRing to one place and another location DRing to another place without a significant increase in cost in terms of, the other kind of fixed costs of doing it yourself, the, space, power, network, etc. All that stuff, just doubles again when you have to have a fourth location for a different region to DR into. So there's a lot of reasons that global availability is super important. And then, I talked through most of this. This is the Cliffs Notes version. The RTO RPOs, I'll talk to my marketing team. Some traditional DR can be very low RTO RPO, but it's also really expensive, right? So, but the rest of this really applies well, and making sure that you have kind of minimum downtime, i.e. low mean time to recovery, and you're not paying for something that you hopefully will never use. And you get to share, in some use cases, you get to share all of the cost structures for having this DR site with a number of other folks. I think the one thing I would point out here, though, as you look at DR as a service as an option for your business, is asking the provider tough questions about how are they oversubscribing their DR, how are they accounting for large regional outages. These are things that people just don't ask us, right? That we try to tell them, like, hey, look, you have a prescribed ratio for how we do, the multi-tenant version of our DR as a service. We're looking at our customer base and we're saying, okay, we've got a lot of customers from this state on the coast, right? We want to make sure that we're accounting differently for them so that if they all failed over at once, we can accommodate. And so I think that's something that I would just kind of point out as a helpful tip for those that are looking at this as a potential option. What makes it so special? What makes the VEEAM integration with our platform so important and interesting and easy to implement? I think for those of you on the call that are VEEAM customers or are looking at VEEAM, it's without a doubt one of the simplest ways to configure consistent replication from an environment that you operate to a cloud-based environment, single pane of glass. The control stays in the hands of you, the end user, on how the failovers happen, when they happen, giving all of those capabilities a lot of control, and allowing for reconfiguration on the fly. And so I think that VEEAM is a backup technology, and Mike's going to talk a lot about this here in a little bit. As a backup technology, that is established as a world leader, right? I think just as of like 3 weeks ago, right? Gartner, did the Magic Quadrant for data protection and backup, and VEEAM is, as high and right as you can get in the portfolio. But I think the underestimated and or unknown capabilities around their cloud-based backup and DR just aren't spoken about enough, right? A lot of you that might be Veeam customers may not even know that it's, you know, a point, a click, and a replicate, and that the cost of doing so can be, you know, quite low as it compares to solutions in the past. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to walk us through what ransomware means to Veeam and the backup and replication technologies that they developed to fight it.
Perfect. Thank you, William. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Deemer. I'm going to be the systems engineer here today from the Veeam side and the Veeam perspective. And then what I want to also walk you guys through here is the ransomware and remediation and recovery of ransomware. Like, how do we go against that? So one of the very first things I really want to touch on is actually going to be what if we do get hit with ransomware? So there we go. Let's see. William, can we go to the next slide, please? So let's see if I can do it. Negative. Perfect. All right. So looks like I do got it back. There we go. All right. So what if ransomware hits? What is the very first things that we should really be doing? So I think William really touched on this earlier, and it's really key. And one of the biggest keys is to have a piece of data chain or data set to actually recover to. Now, just having that data might not be good enough, though, right? Why would not having that piece of data set not be good enough? Well, as William said earlier, it likes to stay dormant. Ransomware stays dormant for X amount of time, depending on the rootkit and the toolkit they're using, and really at the end of the day, what they're trying to accomplish. Just like kind of William said earlier about how they'll stay in an environment and try to get between backup windows to make sure that no matter where in the backup window you still try to fall back to, it's going to be compromised. Well, that's where Sure Backup and Data Labs. The Data Labs is kind of the umbrella of everything, and then Sure Backup's one of the cool things that it can do, and really kind of take care of that situation. How does it take care of this situation? It's very easy. From a high level overview, what this is really doing is this is actually going to scan your backups either on a daily basis. You can actually spin up a Sure Backup lab. So basically, it's an on-demand sandbox, right? So it's actually a one-to-one replica of your environment. So let's just say you had a pretty complex environment and you wanted to spin it up to a one-to-one like version. You could definitely do so. What that's really doing is it's testing a whole bunch of things. So it's testing every single time a backup data chain is actually put into this Sure Backup lab or this on-demand Sure Backup data chain, right? So once everything's in there, it's actually going to start testing for like VMware tools, testing for heartbeat, application tests, really making sure that those data chains are good to fail back to. So it also can actually do some malware scans, a lot of cool things in the actual Sure Backup lab. So let's just say you had to fail back to it for whatever reason. This VM went down over here, and we need to actually have it go on. So we can spin it up over here in Sure Backup or the on-demand lab. And what's really good about that is it actually has no internet connectivity, right? So it has no vSwitch connectivity inside, so there's no WAN connection. And really, this is really good to making sure that we are validating that before we put it back into production, that data chain or that data chain is actually all good and good to go. And I'm actually going to get into it a little bit down here, and I'm going to talk to it a little bit more here on the next slide about how we can actually restore from snapshots. So actually taking it right there from the repository and leveraging modern snapshot technology to really help out with this particular environment. So let's actually do that next here. All right. All right. So let's just say you're taking a normal backup, right? So let's just say you have an Oracle, SQL, any of those big transactional databases, a lot of read and writes going on, right? So you're doing your normal backup at 8 p.m. and you're going to 8 p.m. too, right? So this is your normal backup window. So you start at 8 p.m. and you roll up to the nightly at 8 p.m. here, right? So now you're unprotected right here throughout the day. Why is that? Because you're only getting Delta files. And all these deltas from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. are all going to be pushed up here. But let's just say something happened midday at 12. That's going to be a hard thing to hit, right? Because you don't technically have a backup from anything 12 until 8 p.m. that night before. Now, if you're leveraging modern snapshot technology, however, you could roll back to how often you're actually taking your snapshots. So for this particular equation, they're actually taking their snapshots every hour of that particular data store. So no matter what, they're only losing an hour of data at max. So even if they got ransomware at 4 o'clock, they're only going to lose the time difference between the two, because there's if they have replication or something, different story. But for this, they would only lose 1 hour. So really making sure that you're protected during that time and really taking advantage of storage snap technology. And the next really thing I want to touch on just here a little bit is about our VMs, right? So we do have Linux and we do have Windows VM agents, right? So that's something that we can use and leverage. Now, how do we actually get the data back? So our data can become really back online 2 different ways, and they're both done with inside the Explorers. So the Explorers, very high level, are actually how we actually get the data back, whether that be full-blown, I need the entire VM, or just, hey, I need that particular file or subset of data inside of that. So we have Explorers for Microsoft Exchange, Active Directory, SQL, SharePoint, and Oracle. Now, these are just some of the big ones. These are more for your very big transactional writing databases, so a lot of read and writes going on, but there's a lot more out there that we also have as well. So it really kind of, again, depends what you really want to get down to, but you can, inside of an Explorer, let's just say, you could do instant VM recovery. And I'll kind of touch a little bit about some of these more recovery options here a little later, and really showing you how we can really recover from them. But what I really want you to take away from this slide is using modern technology, especially for the snapshot level on the storage side, can really, really protect you compared to your normal backup file. There we go. Now, let's talk a little bit here about how we can actually restore. So I was kind of going into the restore process just a little bit, and I did mention instant VM recovery. So instant VM recovery is going to be instantaneous. Oh, let's not do that, go back. So instant VM recovery is honestly going to be instant, right? So you can go out there and restore instantly to that. Same thing for instant disk recovery. So a C drive, an E drive, a D drive, if those go off, you can instantly mount them right there from the repository. Now, there's also a couple other ways to do it. So you could kind of like we were talking a little bit earlier, you can run right there from the storage snapshot. So if you want to go down, grab the particular data chain from that repository or that particular data vault, you could say, you could actually come and get that back. Now, you could also get it back from a secure backup target, whether that be a phoenixNAP or something like that, where you can also leverage something that's offsite and secure that you can leverage and pull that data back. Same thing with tape. So let's just say you guys are really big into the tape environment. You're offsiting that data. You could also offline to tape as well. Now, last but definitely not least is going to be like Cloud Connect, anything that's really offsite. So really mastering that 3-2-1 rule. And this is where really phoenixNAP shines, is really making sure that we can pull that data back to you, or push it back, or even spin it up, really depending on what's going on inside of the environment, and making sure that we can really get those restores back to you and really at an efficient and effective level there. So next, what I want to talk about here a little bit is actually going to be VEEAM-1. So VEEAM-1 at a very high overview is really going to be everything that you want to know about your virtual environment. And this is going to be very, very in-depth. VEEAM-1 really, the longer that it can sit inside of an environment, the longer that it has to really know all the boundaries and know everything inside, the better off it's going to be. Why I say that? One, some of the biggest and coolest features, I think, of VEEAM-1, because it's a monitoring and analytics tool, it shows you under and oversized VMs. So if, let's just say you have a virtual machine out there and you stuck 16 cores on it, but realistically that VM's only using 8. You can go back there and adjust it, knowing that in good faith that you're actually not taking away from what you thought you were actually over allocating, right? Or just the opposite, under allocation, right? So you're seeing a virtual machine or that VM really struggle, or maybe it might go into some VMware stun. Then you're like, oh, hey, look, we need to add some more resources to it so that way it's not freezing up. Now, there's also 200 baked in alarms from VEEAM-1. So again, this is a very, very in-depth monitoring and analytics tool for any of your virtual environments, really checking anything in there. What I like it really a lot, especially from the engineering side, is it makes Visio diagrams. So for me and myself, I do a lot of Visio diagrams when I sculpt architecture and really get into the environment. So when you have VEEAM-1 in there, it actually builds it all out for you, and you can actually just drag and click, and then you're done, right? So it's really just having it run, it builds it itself, and that's one of the biggest, coolest features with it, is really allowing for that Visio diagram to be built. Now, there's also a lot of other cool things inside of VEEAM-1 that you can really leverage and really use to your advantage here. So I'm actually going to pass this back over. Actually, I think this is my last slide. Looks like it is. So I'm going to pass this back over to one of our Platinum VCSP partners, William, and you guys are in great hands.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Michael, for giving us the VEEAM education that I know a lot of you guys really wanted to hear. So they're doing a ton of stuff to make backup and disaster recovery easy, simple, and provide a high level of assurance and protection and kind of the monitoring side. You mentioned the VEEAM-1 stuff at the end. I think there's a lot of great analytics that are in that product that if you haven't taken a look at it, you definitely should. So how does all this work together, right? I think at the end of the day, some of you may have never heard of PNAP, right? Prior to jumping on this webinar. But I think the most important things that I can point out about our partnership with VEEAM, the time that we've been working together, I think is key, right? We've spent the last 7.5 years building a great story around backup and disaster recovery. We're providing a ton of different geo-dispersed locations and different networks and infrastructure services to complement, making it easy to consume, easy to use, low cost and high performance. That's how you get there, right? And when we say proven track record, as of 2.5, 3 weeks ago, right? Gartner, once again recognized PNAP as one of 11 vendors that they focus on for disaster recovery as a service. And I think that's a tribute to our partnership with VEEAM, our expertise and time spent building solutions that really drive availability into organizations, and the reach that our company has, our capabilities to deliver services all over the globe. We're adding more points for the disaster recovery service and backup service over the next year, so that at more of these locations you can get the same high quality service from PNAP. And so at the breaking it down very simply, right? We've got a ton of different ways that we're partnered with VEEAM, that we're building great technology together. We've got a truly best-in-class Cloud Connect implementation for those that are looking to use the Cloud Connect technology in VEEAM to do backup and DR as a service, or offsite backup and DR. We've got a suite of kind of more fully orchestrated disaster recovery as a service capabilities. A practice around backups for Office 365. Our webinar today wasn't about Office 365, but there's a ton of work that we've been doing with VEEAM there to make sure that your data in Microsoft Office 365 is protected. Many of you probably aren't aware that Microsoft's very clear about who controls the data in Office 365. And spoiler alert, it isn't Microsoft, right? You're the data controller, and they rely on you to ensure that data is backed up and secure. They've got a couple things that they've thrown in there to help. They definitely geo-replicate data to make sure that there's durability of data. But that geo-replication is nearly instant, right? If you delete an email, it's replicated and deleted from the other side as well. They do provide a recycle bin for deleted emails and deleted objects, but after 30 days, it's gone, right? So there's a lot of gaps there that you gotta, kind of hone in on. So if you're interested in that, please definitely reach out. And then I think the most unique thing that we've done with Veeam and other partners is we've been building a community cloud around data security and compliance, a place where companies can take their critical applications, bring them to a VMware powered cloud service, get a ton of security and compliance capability enhancements by making that migration, and ultimately realize not only a migration to the cloud for critical apps, but also a very secure and compliant destination that is friendly with the tools that they're used to using on-prem. So very kind of important story there around data security. We kind of wrap a lot of this up with our phoenixNAP client portal, try to make it easy so that you can, see your usage, billing, kind of built-in automation of resources. I think that's it. I think we're going to move to Q&A. Before we move to Q&A, I'm going to pop up our last poll question. Our marketing people love this one. So I think that if you guys can check, once it launches, if you guys could check that one for me. Takes a minute on my side to tell when it actually launches up here. Oh, we're almost there. There it is. All right. We'll give that just a little bit more time. Everybody click the button, please. All right. I'll go ahead and close out that poll. All right. Settle that in, and then we'll move into some Q&A. We've already got a little bit in the Q&A bucket there. So let's go ahead and jump on these things. Michael, first one for you, dude. Is VEEAM-1 included in the BNR suite?
It is not included in Veeam backup and replication. However, you could get a bundle where they are included. So yes, it's not included in the actual Veeam backup and replication ISO, but there is a bundle where you can get the suite of the two products together. So yeah.
Yeah, I think they call it the availability suite. Is that correct, Michael?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So you get that Veeam availability suite SKU, and you get the VEEAM-1 capabilities. Let's see here. We had a couple people actually kind of sharing some of their experience with us. I'm going to try to, address some of that generically. Most of it was around, how do I protect myself from being attacked by ransomware, not just recover? Because in the example that was shared in the questions privately, exactly what we've talked about, right? They found the backup software via scanning. They eliminated it and ensured the backups were unusable. That's, like I said, it's becoming pretty typical. There are a couple of places that I think are really important to talk about here. I feel like a dinosaur bringing this up, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. If you guys want to do some research, right? If you Google my name and you Google binary whitelisting, I spent a lot of years trying to change people's minds that organizational binary whitelisting was the way of the future. Unfortunately, in 2006, 2007, the technology that we had to execute on something like that was very limited and very hard to implement, right? You had to spend a lot of man hours, manually authorizing software. It was a little easier early on because most of the software was pretty static and was manually upgraded by central IT. But ultimately, just kind of cutting the story short, we definitely got to a place later, and we're at a place now where technologies like Microsoft App Locker can help ensure that unknown executables don't execute on systems, right? And I think that that's probably your best spot, because an antivirus engine is still going to be signature based today. Maybe it picks up the behaviors. If you have a more quality antivirus product that picks up the behaviors that are recognizable for ransomware spreading inside your environment, but then you're just hoping that it doesn't get there to your critical environment before the system, the behavioral analysis detection engine picks it up. So, you know, I don't think that's where it's at. I truly believe that, you know, a form of binary whitelisting that is easy enough, maybe it uses digital signatures or publisher signatures to allow everything from WebEx that's signed to work, or allow everything from Microsoft that's signed to work. That takes a lot of that overhead off. So I would kind of point you in that direction. And there's, you know, some are better than others. You know, if you are still using some of the more traditional capabilities around antivirus, you probably should look at augmenting or upgrading from there. Yes, so someone asked if we are offering insider protection for the BAS. Yes, so not only do we offer insider protection for our cloud-based services, right? So the hosted VMs where we do backups on behalf of the customer. I mentioned our data security cloud product where VMs are backed up automatically by phoenixNAP as a part of the service delivery. We're working implementing the insider protection capabilities there. The other thing that I wanted to bring up for offsite data protection is our partnership with Cloudian and our implementation of object storage, right? We call it phoenixNAP Object Storage Service. It's a mutual partnership between VEEAM, Cloudian, and phoenixNAP, and we are leveraging their data immutability capabilities, or their worm storage technology on that device, to ensure that offsite backups that are sent to us are actually immutable. And this helps tremendously when you're dealing with ransomware, because there's nothing you can do to change those objects for a period of time. For the policy period, they're impenetrable at the storage level. So I think that's good. Yeah, let's see. So I think the same person was talking about, it says snapshots are nice if you have the ability to do so. What about companies that don't run a storage provider that integrates with VEEAM? Example, Michael, being HP MSA.
So if they do have an HP NSA, so that would actually, let me see, HP NSA. So HP is nimble, so that should actually work for some of the snapshot technology.
Yeah, I mean, so you could still do snapshotting and you could still do things like that. The key here is that actually, the difference between direct storage integration makes it faster and better and less strain on the underlying hypervisor.
Yes, definitely less resource use. Yes, absolutely.
So there are still some capabilities there. Anybody else have any questions? I think we covered a lot today. Yeah. So Chris, I think that key there is that the direct storage integration. It's hard on VEEAM to write the integrations with every storage array that comes out. I know for a fact that they try really hard to add a bunch of those on there. I'm definitely happy to help you have a couple conversations and try to account for some of that as well. Let's see here. I think that when we talked about, somebody asked about some of the other questions that they asked. I tried really hard to answer a lot of those questions without diving directly into each and every one of them. Like I said, you know, endpoint protection is probably not going to do enough for you alone. You're going to need to have ways to protect your backups from being compromised. You're going to need to have different types of capabilities to prevent executables from running on those systems. And yeah, so I think that those are the capabilities. Somebody, you know, this person did ask, you know, how do you know that your backups are not infected? And how far do you recommend keeping backups to ensure that the backup's not infected? Michael, what's Veeam's kind of best practice? I'll share mine, but what's Veeam's best practice on data retention, backup retention?
It would definitely help if I was unmuted. But the biggest thing is going to be actually sure backup. So sure backup was one of those first slides that I actually went over. And with that being said, sure backup is going to be the one to actually test that backup every single time it's actually configured. So in a perfect world, you should have a sure backup job kick off after every virtual machine. So if a virtual machine goes off, sure backup should be next. Test it, making sure that it's a good backup. Now, how long should you keep your backup? That's really kind of hard to say. You know, and especially with ransomware, and really it kind of goes back to the toolkit that you know, doing the damage. You know, I usually see around a 2 to 3 month ratio, depending, and it's very environmental driven, and really it comes down to the company play as well. But I would say around the 2 or 3 month period.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for the time. We're at the end. I hope it was informative for everyone. And please feel free to reach out. I put some contact information in here. I'll leave it up till the end until we close out the webinar. And again, thank you very much for everybody for coming, and hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.